reminds you of those 2022 targets that I just covered, and then it goes over the 2022 actual numbers. Those are tentative for us. Number of fatalities, we're at 259 for the year, which is 68 over our intended target. Fatality rate and serious injury rate, we're unable to determine right now. We don't have HTMS data to go ahead and classify those. For number of serious injuries, it looks like we are on our target. We had 1,158 serious injuries in 2022, which has us at about 152 serious injuries under our intended target. And number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries, we are currently at 215, which puts us at 42 over our intended target. And what we're asking you today is to endorse the new regional target going into 2023. You can see our updated baselines. It's covering 2017 to 2021. And our one-year target for this year has fatalities at 189, so keeping us on that trend to get us to the 2045 goal of 152. Our fatality rate at 0.82 fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled in order to keep us on that same goal line of 0.53 by 2045. Our number of serious injuries at 1,297 in order to keep us on that goal line to 1,039. And then serious injury rate, we want to keep it under 5.60 for this year to get us to our goal of 3.65 by 2045. And for our number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries, we'd like to keep that number under 172 for this year to keep us on our goal line of 138 by 2045. That's all I got for you guys today. Do y'all have any questions about those numbers?
Has the definition of serious, what constitutes serious injury changed since we initially identified the baseline?
When we initially identified the baseline for our 1% annual reductions, that was covering 2015 to 2019, and that did include that definition change. That definition change won't stop really affecting us until we accept new targets in the next RTP cycle.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Do we have any data as far as, if you can go back a slide, or maybe two slides? No, I'm sorry, the other one. As far you know, we looks like as far as fatalities, those are way up there. Is there any one thing? I mean, is it distracted driving that? I mean, it's interesting to see the fatalities increase there, but we met our target as far as serious injuries there. So what's going on, do you think?
A lot of speculation is that potentially people were able to drive a lot faster now that we're spreading out volume over the course of the day, and therefore usually speed is correlated to fatalities. They're not getting hurt, they're just getting killed instead. We've looked into different demographic characteristics like elderly drivers, young drivers ages 18 to 24, looking at speeding, looking at drunk driving, looking at seatbelt use. So that's what we plan to do this coming up month, is to take a deeper dive into last year's numbers and figure out what may be causing that increase a lot more than the other years.
Any other questions for staff?
Yeah.
So I noticed that you've got number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries combined is 215. Couple of questions. One is, do we know how many of those were fatalities, non-motorized, and then the other, I guess if you want to comment, if I'm reading the number right, you added fatalities and serious injuries, non-motorized account for approximately 15%.
About 20% of the fatalities are non-motorized. Yeah, we can break those out pretty easily. That's just how Federal Highway prefers us to have those combined together. But yeah, about 20% of our fatalities are non-motorized.
And the last question, I'm going to go forward to the slides. What's our reasoning? If we've got a goal of 1,039 serious injuries and 152 fatalities, why are we curbing our progress? Like we're cutting something 5% across the board this year to get down to 150 to 152. Why wouldn't our goal just be a flat goal? This is our 2045 goal. We're going to try to hit it next year. It's not like we can. I don't really understand the logic in curbing down our progress for our 2023 target of 189 as opposed to just hanging out with it.
Yeah, I think it's because we adopted a trend line. We took that 1% annual reduction against that baseline, and so we just looked at it going out to 2045 just systematically because we knew that we wouldn't be able to see a big drop initially. So I agree with you, we could say 152 next year, but that was just what we adopted for the 2045 RTP.
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
I've got another question. Have any other MPOs in the state adopted a zero tolerance, if you will?
I don't think any other MPOs in the state have adopted a zero,
But
which is zero.
other departments of transportation in the country have.
Yeah, I think National DOT did for pedestrians, if I'm not mistaken, which is zero.
Okay.
Any other questions for the staff? Hearing none, I believe we need a, motion to endorse, the targets there on the screen.
I'll make a motion to endorse. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Moving on, our next, action item is, action item 3B, endorse priorities for the 3-year work program. And I'll turn it over to Sean Faltzer, the Transportation Planning Manager, for this item.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So each year, those of you who have participated in these meetings in the past, the Tennessee Department of Transportation, TDOT, asked for our help in developing the 3-year work program, the set of projects that will be incorporated into the state's priorities, the state budget for transportation projects. And as part of that, they are looking at a number of different criteria, from regional connectivity to accessibility, economic development, and safety. And part of that process is also tapping into the regions and the MPOs across the MPOs and RPOs across the state for their input on the rankings of these projects. And so each year we've kind of looked at the list, and a lot of these projects are probably very familiar to you, as we've some of them are listed within the Transportation Improvement Program, our short-range capital plan. A lot of these projects are also contained within our long-range transportation plan, our regional transportation plan. And so today we'll kind of walk you through, a couple of background slides, and then we have included in the packet a list of those draft rankings based on a methodology that we've used a number of times in the past that really tries to prioritize projects that are, ready to move forward into construction. And so just a couple more items as background. So this is kind of the TDOT selection criteria that they've shared. And as you can see, the blue boxes on the right-hand side with the region, MPO, RPO rank makes up about a quarter of the overall selection criteria. And so basically, our input will go into these weights that will then be utilized as part of their selection process as which projects will move forward in the next 3 years of the work program. And so just kind of an overview, there is a long list of projects. I sent you the link to TDOT's new project hub that is a really nice website for viewing a lot of these. Typically, we've had just a project list in the past, but one thing that's different about this year is that TDOT identified a number of committed projects, and so these are projects that are already in the current 3-year work program. It's updated annually, so these projects we have not included in the ranking because they are included, and the assumption is that they're going to move forward in the coming years. It's about 14 projects totaling about $660 million in funding needs, which I guess it equates to about what we have seen in terms of investment on state level projects in our region on an annual basis. And then we have proposed projects, and these are really the ones that we prioritize for the ranking. And these are projects that are under consideration for future 3-year work programs. So there's 45 projects that were identified as proposed, and the funding need for those 45 projects was over $2 billion, pretty substantial amount of investment. If we look at those proposed projects and kind of break them up into what is their status in the project development process, you'll see that 14 of them, about $500 million worth of funding needs are ready for construction. So those projects are just looking for the money to then move forward so that they can begin construction. The next 14 projects, totaling about $800 million, are projects that are in preliminary engineering and are approaching or ready for the right-of-way phase of project development. And then lastly, the remaining 17 projects totaling about $850 million are really projects that are early on in project development, either not started or, just embarking on that preliminary engineering phase of work. So that's kind of a summary of the candidates. And then what we utilized was a methodology that we've used in the past, really looking at the phase of development as a key prioritizing factor. So looking at ranking projects that are ready for construction above those that were ready for right-of-way versus those that are ready for preliminary engineering and design. There is kind of working our way down the steps. There are a couple of projects that we've elevated as well. These are kind of the safety and operations projects. You'll see some of the ramp improvement projects. These are projects that aren't necessarily identified or prioritized through the regional transportation plan, but projects that are identified by TDOT and addressing some of the safety needs that arise or operational concerns that arise. And then another kind of sub-ranking within each of those factors within step one is kind of defaulting to our regional transportation plan and how projects ranked within that process to further sort projects. If there's competing projects that are both ready for construction, taking the project that has a higher ranking in the RTP process and identifying that ahead of others. And then lastly, we have our what we call new starts, and these are projects that are new to this list and probably new to most of the folks in this room. Didn't see some of these projects in previous iterations of this ranking process. Projects that they're not contained within the regional transportation plan, and so they've been identified as needs from TDOT, and I think these are important new start projects, but given that we identify a lot of these other priorities that have secured funding within our plan or are even contained within our TIP, the new starts would be falling beneath those. And so I don't know exactly how many, but there might be half a dozen new start projects that are towards the bottom of the list that you may have questions about. And so we contained the ranking of the proposed projects within your packet, and there were some projects, obviously, as we went down the list that are, have the same ranking, and so you'll see kind of a repeat of certain ranking numbers, but we've completed that along with containing a number of project details, such as where the project's located, its TDOT PIN number, the requested phase of work as well as its existing phase of work, and the remaining funding that is needed in order to complete that project, as well as the rank. Also have, in addition to this ranking, we're looking for your feedback as well. In addition to supporting a proposed ranking, are there other projects within your community that you would like to see on this list or being considered for your work program? If you go to the next slide, if there's also, if there's any projects that are on this list that you have concerns about or that you have questions about, please share those as well. And then, lastly, we'd just be asking if we answer any questions and address that, just for the endorsement from the committee for this to be considered by the Transportation Policy Board. And then what we would then do is circle back with TDOT and share the proposed rankings with them to be factored into their process.
The only concern I would have is the bottlenecks that typically occur on state routes between municipalities, that fall out of incorporated areas and unincorporated areas. Those tend to fall to the bottom of the rankings typically, and, they become real bottleneck issues locally, for county and city residents. People like to go on social media and complain about our elected officials and whatnot. So anything y'all can do to, I guess, acknowledge the, I don't know if it's a lack of funding that local county governments in particular can throw towards those type of projects with the state of Tennessee, trying to prioritize making those improvements in a timely fashion, the improvements they're making inside the city limits.
Okay, thanks, Lynn.
Hey, I like to say I agree with what Tom's saying. I'm looking at one of our projects in Robertson County between Springfield and White House, and that's a bottleneck that looks like it keeps being pushed down.
We've got, and what I'm specifically thinking of right now is Highway 70. It's not even on the list, off the county unincorporated part. But they've got a widening between South Memphis Road and I think Vendor's Ferry, or Park Glen Avenue and Vendor's Ferry Road, but then that leads Vendor's Ferry to 109. And then once you hit 11, it goes back out to 5 lanes. But in the county part, it's 2 lanes. They're number 41, I remember them, they're 41 and 58 on the list. One is, at the stage, the western section's ahead, phasing in the eastern section there. They are on that list. Fill that gap. Between 109 and 55, I didn't see it. Yeah, it's number 41 and 58. 41.
Bottom of page 4.
3 and 4 near the bottom. And then, 58 is near the bottom of page 4. Okay, I see it. Yeah, they're in there. My apologies. So it is there, but it doesn't get a very high ranking.
Right.
I had several observations. There are 59 projects on that list. There's 11 of them that involve I-24 from essentially downtown Nashville to southeastern part of Rutherford County. A lot of them are those ramp projects, and at least the higher priority ones that are already committed are those ramp projects. I understand I-24 is like the heaviest used corridor radiating out of Nashville, and it's an important road. Just want to make sure that all of these 11 projects are well coordinated, and that we're not going to create a situation like we see in Gallatin now, where there was substantial expenditure of funds to build a road that we now found insufficient for, that will create a coordination problem with a later project that's not part of the existing committed list. So I encourage TDOT to thoroughly study all of these projects that are listed. There's 11 of them. 11 of the 59 are I-24 projects. And so I want to make sure that we're not throwing money for bad, and that we're going to be changing something later on that we might be able to accomplish with one of the earlier phases. Similarly, the downtown loop, 40, 24, 65, inner downtown loop, there's 6 different projects listed in here for the reconfiguration of the whole operations there downtown. And similarly, that needs to be looked at to make sure we're not expending other resources that we're going to come back in and have to spend more money later. Also, we probably, what's not included in there is what we put into the TIP, was the east side to East Bank connection, the Cleveland Avenue extension, and we talked about it at our last meeting. That project and a few others that were kind of new introductions need to be considered in this list. And that includes the state-funded, primarily state-funded 386 reconstruction leading into Gallatin, which was, kind of headed by the TDOT itself, and was not part of our normal process of going through the MPO and that. So, I went over this list pretty extensively because I think it's important, and I think there there are other projects also that we might want to consider, or have CDOT consider adding if possible, particularly if we can save some funds by combining some of these various projects. It might help us save some funds to where we can find additional high priority needs. But I had a couple of minor corrections I think need to be made on page 1 of 4, project number 12 down on the list, which is committed list. Reconstruction of Highway 31W41 underneath the railroad bridge in Goodlettsville. That's actually Highway 31W and US 41 in that segment, or identified here as Highway 31A. So that probably needs to be corrected, to make sure that that's properly identified.
What did you say it actually should be?
It's Highway, it's
31W.
combined US 41 and US 31W as opposed to Highway 31A, US 31A. I had a couple more there, but, near the bottom of page 3 of 4, that next to last project says I-65 in Davidson County, the I-24 interchange improvements at exit 78. There is no exit 78 on I-24 is in Rutherford County. So it's, that first description there needs to be corrected. And, as we mentioned, I think there's probably other opportunities to identify some other projects. I was talking to Jonathan here briefly about, I didn't see any project on here. I know it's a priority that they improve Highway 30, US 31 between Brookwood and Franklin. It's not in Sumner County, not in our neck of the woods. In Gallatin, we do have a project on this list to improve Highway 31 from essentially the center of town out to, it needs to be properly identified, but it's out to Albert Gallatin Avenue, and we would ask for some consideration to extend the limits of that to Airport Road. Now that the Albert Gallatin extension is completed, that's really where the traffic flow is going, is that section northeast that it's not currently, it is not in this listing. So, I'd be glad to, share this, I want to share this with the UPO staff as well, or if there's any other opportunities that we can identify that would, help regional mobility as far as surface transportation goes. I'll hold off on making any motion for endorsement.
Mr. Morrison, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to comment there based on what Bill was saying there, is that, the ranking, the numerical ranking is an important component, that information that you provided is just as, and in a lot of cases, more important. And so that's information that we want to document, to go in with the rankings when they're making their decisions, so that they see and hear, what you're saying there. So make sure that we do document that, and I know the NPO does that, so I just wanted to make sure. And also what Tom was saying, again, on those projects, especially if they're touching another NPO or touching another RPO, those should be included in their rankings as well. And so, those cross endorsements between the two entities is also an important, it may be a high priority for the national NPO, but, not for the Middle Tennessee RPO or vice versa. And so sometimes those combined efforts can also make a difference. So that documentation is also important. So just wanted to note a couple of things on, verbalizing and documenting the written portion that goes along with the numerical ranking as well.
Marty?
You're not suggesting though that we were with the ad project, or suggesting the ad project at this point, we're just looking at what is already existing.
So
this isn't an opportunity to add projects, it's really work program.
So the projects in the hopper, we're committed to all of them. And so there's the terminology, the ones that are committed are already in the 3-year work program, and these proposed to go into the next work program, but we're committed to all of them. also take, like Sean had mentioned earlier, talking about, you know, that next wish list of projects. And so, we do continue to build those wish lists across the state as well. And, we'll see what we can do as far as getting the funding to do all that. Obviously, we've got about $1 billion, and half of that goes to recurring costs. We're gonna have to build that spreads across the state pretty thin, real quick. So, but the wish list, we do want to, see those as well, I think.
What I was getting at is we shouldn't have an expectation that a new project will be added to this for it to go through this final step. That would be my.
That's not likely, right, correct.
One thing Bill brought up, and I forget what the term form is, but I don't know, Stacy, I don't know if this is a question for you or for the MPO staff, but the governor's projects, essentially the ones that were in his budget recently, we have one in Sumner County. How did those fit into this, or do they fit into it yet, or?
Well, and that's kind of what, you know, what you're saying there, that, you know, then you get into the politics of all that, and then those become kind of unknown, you know, what the legislature does, almost earmarking certain projects. Typically, those are ones that are gonna be, you know, in the 3-year plan, but sometimes those are ones that are kind of brought in as kind of, where's the next 10 that was gonna be in the 3-year plan, but we didn't have the budget for it. We're gonna pull those in and do those as, you know, these earmark type projects. And so, you know, there's some unknown there, and, you know, then we'll see what happens at the legislative level this year.
And those are legislative projects is the term, or something like that, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah, okay.
I guess, do you have any advice for MPOs as part of that process? Because it seems like, at least last year, a lot of those were new projects that weren't identified on the list. And so, is it beneficial for the MPOs to identify what their top 3 new projects would be to be considered for that?
I mean, I definitely think that should make a difference, and those should be, again, identified, and again, like I was saying, that written portion of why these are important priorities for the MPO beyond this list, and so on and so forth. And again, we'll get that information to leadership so that at least they have it.
And so, you know, those new projects, of course, they came with a big chunk of state dollars. They're already funded to at least some extent anyway, and Sumner County put $10 million in on one of these projects as well. And so, them not being on this list, is that gonna have a negative impact on those projects? Because there's a piece of the programming office's rankings on these projects and all that stuff that comes from this recommendation we're gonna do. So, is that disadvantageous to not have those projects on the list now? Or is that gonna hurt those projects as far as keeping them moving forward, I guess is what I'm asking, because we're not gonna be voting on those today or including those in a recommendation at all?
I've been making some assumptions, you know, kind of some unknown there, for sure.
I got you.
But then obviously, you know, part of that is if, you know, the local jurisdiction, you know, that obviously, we've heard that for years, you know, if local jurisdictions willing to do a component of the project, pay for a portion, you know, those are obviously prioritized projects as well, so that's always, you know, the hope. And a lot of the information that's been put out on our website that we've all seen as well. And, the commissioner's trying to make his rounds to further address that and answer additional questions, so hopefully that'll be addressed, here soon. I think that will be scheduled.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Felix?
Yeah, I have a question. It's more probably for T-Dot, but on page 3, here from the bottom, someone mentioned that the project is yet another branch management and widening. Is that still the scope of that project? Last I heard, you were looking at not something connected to branch management, but you're looking at the Falcon Shoulder. And if that's the case, that's still impact what is, you know, still this project and the ranking. Just get a little bit more information there specifically. I know you was looking at that more specifically, but I haven't heard anything in quite a while. Just trying to find out what exactly.
Stacy, maybe you can't speak to this or anything, but I know there's been some chatter about, toll type lanes and that kind of thing. Would that be something that might be considered on the Vietnam Veterans Project?
There's some limited information again on the website, and that's really what we're referring to with that until leadership gets out and addresses everybody personally to explain that further. What the plan is there.
And just to clarify, we're talking about the TDOT's like Build With Us.
Yes, Bill.
Yeah, if you search that on the website, you can find the videos and materials associated with what, Josh had mentioned of, choice lanes.
Yeah, choice lanes.
Well, not toll lanes, that was I misspoke there, I apologize.
We can't do that yet.
The former TDOT.
Anybody else got any questions or comments? Okay, Tom, did you have anything? At this time, there's a recommendation on the screen. Do I have a motion to endorse on this proposed ranking of projects?
I'll make a motion to endorse the listing of projects, with the comments made at our committee.
Is there a second? Tom? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. The three-year work program priorities are endorsed by this body. I believe that concludes our action items. Moving on now to item 4A, informational item, call for studies for the fiscal years 24-25 UPWP. And I'll turn this over to Sean for this one.
Thank you again. So we're kicking off the process for updating the Unified Planning Work Program fairly early this year. I know in previous years, it seems like we've been not starting until February or March, but wanted to kind of get out in front of things this year and start to at least get some conversation going. I know there's been a lot of changes with the bipartisan infrastructure law and a lot of these discretionary grant programs that are now available. You know, obviously changes with the pandemic and the gradual return to the normal or hybrid work environment for whatever folks are, you know, utilizing these days. And, you know, kind of shapes what our priorities are going to be, especially when it comes to, you know, planning activities over the coming 2 years. And so, you know, those familiar with our planning work program, it contains kind of two different components of information. One is the types of activities that the MPO staff will be working on in the coming 2 years, because we have a 2-year work program. And in addition to, you know, how we'll be utilizing that federal funds for planning activities and carrying out core MPO programs and requirements, also coordinating a lot of the planning that's going on in the region, because there's planning going on at the local level, from, you know, land use, transportation planning, to transit activities at the regional level, to statewide efforts led by TDOT. And so trying to make sure that those are in alignment and kind of moving in the same direction. So we are kicking off the update process for the UPWP, and this will cover, the next work program will cover federal fiscal years 2024 and 2025. If we go to the next slide, you can access the document on our website, and kind of what is contained within there is some background information, you know, transportation planning overview about, you know, MPO requirements and other core documents, but also some of the key planning topics and issues that, you know, are pressing and priorities of the state and federal level, but also, you know, kind of somewhat unique to our region or our metropolitan area. And then we've also have some information about the different tasks and outcomes that we want to achieve through over the next 2 years. And so kind of our key tasks are, you know, program administration, regional planning, transportation programming, which is, you know, a lot of the TIP work that we've been involved with over the past year, research and analytics with all of the data and modeling work that we're carrying out, communications and outreach for meetings and bringing in stakeholders on different efforts. And then if we go to the next slide, we're looking at each year close to 3 million. I guess this could potentially change with the update of the urban areas, but it's about 80% federal funding, about 2% state, and about 18% local is how it breaks out. But that is a combination of a couple of funding sources. Two funding sources that get fed into the Consolidated Planning Grant, the CPG, which is from Federal Highway and FTA, our PL planning funds, and then our Section 5303. And then also some additional funding that comes through TDOT, or from FHWA through TDOT, known as the SPR, State Planning and Research Grant funding. And so with that funding, if we go to the next slide, we carry out a lot of in-house work and then also bring in consultants for specific efforts. And so, I've mentioned some of the stuff that staff carries out in-house. Some of the consultant efforts typically involve larger studies. I'll talk next about, kind of two efforts that we are kicking off. One is the growth management study, regional growth management study that we've talked about. That will definitely be bringing on a consultant to carry out that work, which will be a big effort. And I think, other opportunities involve, acquiring data or getting software that, we can't develop or prepare in-house, or just for, specific task orders that we need some specific expertise with. Talking about the regional growth management study, the focus of this one is going to be to, equip you all, communities within our region with, better tools and policies to manage the growth and development that's happening with our region. And it's been pretty rapid, and certain communities have more experience with it than others. But I think that through this effort, there's kind of a couple of different goals and objectives that we want to achieve. One being to, increase awareness of, growth and development and how significant it is, but also what are some of those tools or things that we could be doing to manage it. Kind of expanding our toolkit of considering other policies that might not be widespread across the entire region, and then really kind of helping and guiding communities to support that implementation of some of these policies of what are some toolkits that would be useful to rely on as we move forward and try and implement some of these tools at the local level. And then obviously revenue is a key piece of when it comes to the infrastructure investments that are necessary to manage growth and development, where are potential opportunities for additional revenue to support that. And so we're hoping to get this RFP issued this month and get some proposals in that we can be reviewing, and for those that are interested in maybe reviewing some of those proposals with us, we'll take it volunteers. Then next, we're also looking to update the Coordinated Human Services Transportation Plan, last updated in 2016. Covers a pretty large geography. Last time we focused on beyond the MPO boundaries in tackling, adding in Clarksville and Middle Tennessee RPO counties to support this effort, but really focuses on identifying those transportation needs of individuals with disabilities, elderly adults, and people with lower incomes, and really trying to provide some strategies to better meet those needs and prioritize those services for future funding and implementation. And that funding source has typically been the 5310 program, MSEDS, Enhanced Mobility for Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities. And I think, you know, through this, there's not always a lot of money to implement a lot of these strategies, but I think there's an opportunity through this update to really increase awareness of some of the services and providers that exist. I think with GNRC, the MPO being housed within GNRC, we have aging and disability staff that have a lot of connections with communities and nonprofit or other organizations that are providing services for older adults. So being able to better enhance the coordination going on between those different providers and funding opportunities. And then, you know, also just, you know, improving the quality of service. I think it can be a fairly fragmented system to navigate with the various services that are out there. But I think through this effort, we have an opportunity to, you know, identify and streamline some and improve some quality of service and obviously increasing options that are available to people, as we will be working very closely too with the public transit agencies within the region through this effort. So that one we're also hoping to kick off within the next month or so, and we'll keep everybody up to speed on what we'll be working on. I know some of you in this room will probably be more involved in that effort than others, but please let us know if you have, you know, strong interest in participating on that. So I think the apologies for the referring to the TPB here, but we need TCC's help too in this. Is we'll have a survey that's available and live, and kind of looking for a couple of pieces of information. One is, you know, what are some of the local planning activities that are going on at the local level? I think we've done a really good job in the development of the last UPWP to really inventory a lot of the local planning activities that are going on, and it's pretty impressive all the work that's going on in your communities, and knowing, being better informed as what's going on in your communities, I think allows us to identify some opportunities maybe at the regional level, or to, you know, leverage what's going on in your community with some of the work that staff is engaging in. And I think in addition to kind of some of those local efforts is also, you know, what are you seeing as regional priorities that we should be collectively working on, and you know, staff should be addressing in the coming 2 years, whether it's through, you know, a study or data or support for. I know we've heard in the past that with all of the discretionary grant opportunities that have become available, that grant writing is in higher demand, and how could we support local governments through that process as they are going after, you know, grants now at the federal level. So happy to take any questions on that, but we will send this survey out as in the follow-up email, and we'll be hoping that you guys can, over the next month, be kind of plugging away and submitting not only, you know, information about what's going on at the local level, but any priorities that you think should be elevated to the regional level as well. Do we have anything else here? Okay, just the last thing on the schedule. So as I mentioned, we're getting started early so that you guys can start brainstorming ideas and getting those to us, and then we'll, you know, review those as they come in, and we'll kind of bring them back to you all in March, where we can discuss some of those priorities that we've seen. I think we still haven't received, you know, kind of the schedule of when TDOT would like to see documents delivered, but I think typically they're looking to get, you know, a draft of the UPWP by April. So that's when we can put together a, you know, list of the planned activities that we'll like to see within the work program, and then present that in May to TCC and TPB, have a public review and comment through the summer, and then try and get the public hearing and adoption by July, which I know is ambitious given that July is a strong vacation month, but I think our meeting schedule this year is the Transportation Policy Board meetings will be on the odd month, and so we'd like to get that completed before August. So that's what we're aiming for. Happy to take any questions or comments.
Bill?
Sean, do y'all have on your website a listing and brief description of all the other studies that you've done under this leg of y'all's program that we can look at and make sure we don't replicate something that's already been done, or give us ideas about how we can maybe start a second phase or a similar project in another area?
Yeah, on the website, there's a list of previous studies that have been completed. In the document as well, there's kind of highlights of what was done over previous years. And then one thing that we've also really built out is in the appendix, there's a list of the activities that are underway within the region, and those are, locally funded efforts. I think, for example, the Sumner County Active Transportation Plan was contained within there, funded through TDOT's Urban Transportation Planning Grant. I think one thing that would be, now that you mention it, that would be kind of interesting is that's a very stagnant, PDF within the document in the appendix, but I know that, just like the TIP, these studies are very dynamic and, are getting completed over the course of the document. So there might be a way for us to make those more readily available where, kind of similar to what we've done with the TIP tracker, is allow you to go make notes about your projects, is there might be a way for you to go, make updates about some of the planning activities that are underway, or, if they're recently completed or adopted, making some of those edits and changes within the website.
One thing I was thinking about, Sean, and this might be a question for Mr. Centai over at Federal Highway, but earlier in this, on the agenda, we had the updates to the safety performance measure targets, right? Now, we've had a lot of discussion about that over the years. To me, it still seems like there's performance targets, but there's not anything really driving it forward. Like, okay, well, the numbers are going up. What do we do about that? Would some kind of a plan to address that? Is that a UPWP kind of eligible expense? Could we do something to try to get our arms around, to help meet our safety targets, as opposed to just kind of looking at them every year and just seeing that they continue to increase?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's definitely something that would be eligible and that we would definitely encourage. I mean, I think especially in the area of safety, what we're encouraging is a lot of local road safety plans. We've got the Safe Streets for All program where we're requiring safety action plans. But anything that the MPO wants to do with their PL 5303 or SPR funding in that area, or any of the other performance measures, asset management, operation, transit would definitely be an eligible use of the funding.
I mean, I know we can't get into like individual project design or anything like that, but just, there's certain things that are out of this body's control. We talked about that last month or last time, I think. But there's got to be things that this body, as far as project prioritization or something, could do to address that in some way, So anyway, just a thought. Anybody else have any comments on? Did you have anything?
I think this topic came up last year when the Safe Streets for All grant opportunity came available, and communities were trying to determine if they were going to apply on their own, or if there could be potentially like a collective plan for the region to make them eligible for the implementation grants or actual projects. And so we're happy to, continue to have that conversation. I know Metro has developed their Vision Zero plan and implementation or action plan. I forget the exact name. So they're, working already down that path. But that's not to say that, we couldn't focus on other communities within the region too, and kind of set you guys up for future applications. I think the safety one too, staff is involved in a number of different conversations. There's, Ashley, Daniel, and Max can kind of reel off like the different groups that are meeting, from traffic records to, we meet on the safety targets with TDOT to strategic highway safety plan. And so there's a lot of efforts underway, but, I think that safety is a good focus one where, given that the numbers that we've seen, that, we could definitely dedicate more attention to it and, be identifying ways to, beyond just infrastructure, of how we can go about, collaborating with other entities that are involved in, operation, enforcement, education, things like that.
Any additional comments, questions for staff? Hearing none, this is informational item, so there's no action required on this one. Moving on, reports, FHWA, FDA report.
Yeah, so hey everyone, Sean Santaya with the Federal Highway Administration Tennessee Division. I feel like I've been saying this every year for the last 2 years, but just want to thank you guys for taking action on your safety performance target. This is a federal requirement written in regulation, but even beyond just the action of meeting the requirement, I have appreciated how this body has used this as an opportunity to have discussion and try to identify actions that we can do to try to move the needle in these performance measures. Bill, I think maybe you asked about Vision Zero or any others. As far as I'm aware, I think only Florida DOT might be the only state DOT that set a Vision Zero as their target that's reported to FHWA. We asked for a data-driven kind of target setting process. And so that kind of trips people up about whether or not a Vision Zero would be acceptable, but really we'll accept the state's target setting process, for the most part, and just look to you guys, the states and the NPOs, to define those targets for what for what fits for your area. And I appreciate that you guys are having this discussion, looking for actions, and ways that you can try to improve performance in these areas. I even just noticed, Sean, when you guys are doing your priorities for TDOT's project, prioritizing projects that have safety and operational improvements over some of these other projects that maybe don't necessarily demonstrate that is, that's an action in and of itself that I'm sure is intentional and looking to try to move the needle. So again, I just appreciate y'all taking the action and being so deliberate about that. Nashville's still the only MPO, as far as I'm aware, that set their own safety targets. Everyone else is still supporting the safety targets. So I want to introduce a couple of folks to y'all. So I recently got a promotion within our office, so we had 2 new planners join. So seated next to me is Melanie Murphy. She's going to be the new planner for Region 3, so overseeing the Nashville MPO and Clarksville MPO. And then back here is Zach Coleman. Zach is our other new planner on board. He'll be backing up Melanie. So, and I'll be continuing to be involved as well. But Melanie will be your main point of contact moving forward with our support from Zach and I and the rest of the folks across our office. So Melanie's got a couple of additional updates. If I can give the floor over here.
Sure, yeah, just a couple updates, a couple things, items of note that we figured we wanted to share with you all. We got a new FHWA administrator, got confirmed in early December. So Shannon Zott is our new FHWA administrator. He has a lot of experience, led the Delaware DOT and Florida DOT, so he's a great fit for FHWA. The FY 2023 raise note has been released. It was released December 1st. So there's about $1.5 billion of grant funding available for projects of significant local or regional value or impact. The applications are due February 28th, and then those awards are expected to be announced no later than June. And then lastly, I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen the census, numbers were released, or the qualifying urban areas for the 2020 census have been released. GIS data, the shapefile is expected to be released pretty soon. Don't want to give exact dates, you never know, but hopefully soon. And then we'll also get more information on those TMA, those transportation management areas, $200,000, 200,000 population or more, and those will be officially designated later in the year. And then one thing I did want to note is, there were some key changes on kind of what that criteria is for an urban area, just in case y'all haven't seen it, but they're now also looking at housing unit density instead of just looking at population solely. The minimum population threshold to qualify in the urban area went from 2,500 to 5,000, or a minimum housing unit density of 2,000 housing units. And then lastly, there's no longer urban clusters, everything is just urbanized area. There's no more of that distinguishing feature of urban clusters or urbanized area, it's all just urbanized area now. And I think the only update on the slide. Any questions?
This is not in our jurisdiction, but, Tri-Cities, are they gonna end up being like a TMA? Or are they gonna remain 3 MPOs? Do y'all know?
There's still 3 separate urbanized areas.
I got you.
Yeah, at any point, they could choose to consolidate.
They can, okay, I got
As a big MPO, if they chose to, but there's still 3 distinct urbanized areas that are the designation.
So the designation for urban area is 5,000 people within census tract or census block or.
Oh, there's like, I looked at it, but there's really specific,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know the details exactly, what,
Or 2,000 housing.
yeah.
What were the standards? Because they were a similar equation.
You mean as the previous one?
Yeah.
The previous was just the 2,200 population
We're talking
density.
about.
That population threshold, that was the only kind of thing that made it urban area. And now it's 5,000 or the 2,000 population.
Any other questions for Friends of Federal Highway? Okay, moving on to the next report, Stacy Morrison with TDOT.
Thank you, Josh. Again, Stacey Morrison with TDOT, Long Range Planning Manager. Our planning grants, I approved a couple invoices actually this morning for some within the MPO here. And so, based on the consultant's reports, it looks like they're making progress, so hopefully that is the case for those of you that have those. Hope to establish a schedule and a proposal for additional planning grants this year. And also trying to add some safety funding in with those. And so, as you know, we've got like our one-pagers, kind of give examples of all the different plans. And so we're trying to do some specialized plans using some specific money on safety. So hopefully we can add that to the pot as well, or maybe a specific file just for those. Working with Daniel and the folks over at Multimodal on that. So putting on the spot there. So we're still working on a proposal for that. And we'll have something out soon for that as well. I also sent out end of the year, lost in the madness of the holidays, the verification of the performance measures for PM 2 and 3, pavement, bridge, and system performance targets. And so those have to be establish your own or adopt those by June. So we got some extra time on those. So more to come, I'm sure, from MPO staff on the direction of those. I can't remember if you all did any specific adoptions of your own on PM 2 and 3 last time, or what you're thinking there, but that'll be coming up pretty quick as well. And like I mentioned, working with the commissioner's schedule to get him out, to answer different questions, but do please look at the website, and, there's a lot of information there as well, so be familiar with that. Okay. Go with us.
I just had one question or one comment, I guess, about the urban transportation planning grants. If that cycle is going to be in the spring, that would be really beneficial as we collect ideas for the UPWP, and I'm sure other MPOs would benefit from this as well. As oftentimes communities will submit really good, like, local planning ideas, and that could be an opportunity to kind of pool all these applications together, and, maybe there's a more ideal funding source like UTPG.
Yeah, we'd like to try to do that. We'd like to try to do them in the spring when everybody's doing their budgets, so that they can go ahead and budget for that match on those. So, yes, that would be the goal, and try to get those out by mid-year.
The same value you can apply for.
That'll be my proposal. We may have some additional flexibility on that, especially over the safety. We got a grouping that we need to spend quicker, and so we'll just do whatever we can depending on the project. And, we've got some flexibility there. We do have, we've kind of set an amount, but if you can prove your case for additional, we'll always, listen. I think last time, my proposal was about statewide, about 3.2 million. We did, this current round, I think we did 30 projects. We're under budget, and so we've got a little bit of flexibility with that each time with the project. And so I'll explain this as well. So, we do some estimates on the project costs. But when you get into that final scoping, if there's additional needs that are not covered in the scope, and you can show that from, really want to hear that from the locals, it's like, we'd really like to add this to the project, but we're willing to pay the additional match. If we can add X, to the project, please do that, and, we'll look at that request and add additional funds where it's justified. So keep that in mind as well on this project.
Yeah.
Is there any update on the improvement grant? We heard it'll be by the end of December, but that didn't happen.
I'm not saying anything, no.
Just to clarify, the multimodal access grants have been awarded and TAP as well.
Multimodal has been awarded, not certain about that.
We've got a lot of questions on staff, and I don't think that they've made that final determination on those. They were trying to get that done in November, but I don't think if they did, I never saw it either. We got ours.
Oh.
Okay, so maybe they did.
And were you asking about the improved transit grants? I can find out about that one.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure.
Any other questions for Stacy? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to the chair's report. As I'm filling in today, I don't have much of one. It's time, though, for a nominating committee to be set up to recommend a slate of candidates for the annual election of officers. I believe it was Andy Barlow and the staff's intention to nominate Tom Brashear, Jonathan Marston, and Bill McCord to that committee to serve on the nominating committee. Are y'all willing to serve?
Yeah, it pays right.
Right at zero, I think. But, okay. Sean, do we need a motion or anything on that to appoint those folks?
We'll do the election next month.
Okay. Next thing on the agenda is the staff report, and I'll turn it over to Sean for that.
Thank you. So I just wanted we included in the packet kind of a memo on the 2023 meetings, and so just of a lot of the meetings that are important and relevant to you all. As I mentioned, Transportation Policy Board meetings will be on the odd months this year, and they'll be meeting at the Tennessee State Archives building. For TCC, we'll be meeting every month. We'll probably identify a couple of months in there that we can take a break. I know there's conferences and vacations and other things too that sometimes come up. But in terms of TCC, we're meeting we have the library reserved, but GNRC has recently moved offices to Vantage Way. We're at 44 Vantage Way in Metro Center. And there is a conference room there that we might be able to move to and accommodate everybody. And so we're going to test it out next month. And we'll send you all the information. But if that goes well, then that can be our meeting space. But we do have the library secured as well. So
Does it have air conditioning?
yeah, hopefully it won't be 95 degrees in our conference room. Yeah.
He'll be back at 5.
Our building runs a little cool, so.
You got free parking?
Free parking, yeah.
I'm getting in trouble for the $3 I have to pay.
And then, Daniel has a number of, number of bicycle and pedestrian advisory committee, meetings throughout the year, looking at January, March, May, June, August, and October for those. And then, the environmental roundtable meetings are still gonna be on a quarterly basis. Next one being in February, and then every 3 months, for those. Slide. And also just an update on the amendment cycles. I think we may have shared some information about amendment cycles, but we did some minor revisions to this, based on the Transportation Policy Board meeting on odd months. And so, basically through the remainder of the year, we'll be adopting, amendments on, the odd months, March, May, July, September, and November. So if you could get us those submissions the month prior, that would be great. And, Anna would greatly appreciate it so that she can get all the details that she needs to, incorporate the project details into the tip. What else? I think the next one we wanted to mention is, we did hold, it's been a while since we held a project delivery task force meeting, really focused on trying to accelerate projects as they make their way through the TDOT development process. And we had a meeting last month back at the Smyrna Event Center, and it was really solely focused on TDOT's project delivery network. You may have seen this on the website where TDOT's really piloting kind of a new approach to project delivery, and it's focused for now on select, I think, about a dozen state-led projects. And I think Cleveland Street might be one of them. And there's maybe one other within our region that's going to be going through this process. But it really takes a more integrated approach, like concurrent reviews, kind of bringing in the different experts across different divisions to review things early on in the process. And so I think this is all really good stuff that is in line with what the task force has discussed at previous meetings of trying to get away from kind of the siloed approach and, certain aspects not being brought in until very late in the process. So I will send around the project delivery network information. It's on TDOT's website, but we'll just send around the links. And there is a flow chart that is on one page of the whole process, which is a welcomed relief if you've ever looked through the local programs flow chart. No offense, Taylor, you didn't create that. And then the next meeting we're looking at would be for like early February, where we'll kind of dig into the project delivery network in a little bit more detail, and then start to prioritize some of these strategies or actions that we can take moving forward.
But be aware that flow chart is clickable. You can click and change stuff in it, so be aware.
With that, I want to pass it over to Max to just talk a little bit more about the urban areas from the census updates that we've gotten, or at least the pieces that we've gotten so far. Max, do you want to go to the podium or just
I'll just
speak?
do it from here.
Okay.
Since Melanie stole half my thunder, I'll take it from the seat, but, yeah, she said, they released half of it, so we don't have the geographies, which make it a little difficult to know exactly what we're dealing with, but, it came out on the 29th, and as a lot of people were watching Tennessee beat Clemson, I was, studying the, urban areas and how the details of that might lead to some clues. Of our region, we've got, basically all the same large urban areas, which would be 50,000 or more in population. Clarksville is noteworthy. They went over the 200,000 mark, so that makes them a PMA presumably. So now the big four in the state, as the NPOs refer to the largest four, will now be the Fast Five.
being the largest urban area. I think as far as the MPOs go, we have been larger, just due to the multiple urban areas that are within our 7 county footprint. And we're up to 42nd in the nation, so, very, very high, lots of growth in Middle Tennessee, lots of growth in Tennessee in general. When it comes to federal funds, allocations, apportionment, I would assume that we would have more, staying as if Tennessee leapfrogged Indiana in population statewide, and the Middle Tennessee receiving the bulk of the growth over the last decade. So that's a positive for funding. Like I said, mapping not yet available, expected to be this month, but we've been told 2 prior dates that it was going to come out, so I'm not exactly holding my breath. I think, Sean, is there one more slide where we've got actual numbers? There we go. So here's the 2010 population and the, well, it says 22, but it's actually the 2020 urban areas defined. And what you'll see here is a couple of new urban areas below 50,000 and one that dropped off. So Fairview dropped off. It's over, in 2010, it was over that 5,000 mark. So I don't think it actually went away as an urban area, but more likely that it got absorbed into a larger urban area, more than likely Nashville. Nashville's area increased by about 200 square miles, so we're not sure what that will look like, but based on that, my guess would be it went south and west. I don't believe there was any shifting between Murfreesboro and Nashville's urban areas like there was previously with Smyrna and Laverne making the jump. And it does not look like Springfield is going to be different than it was. In 2010, Springfield was actually in the Nashville urban area, and then in 2010. The new one would be White House, so they are a new urban area. Some of the questions that this brings up, and Sean, maybe one more slide. There we go. How does this impact our functional classification, our federal aid urban boundaries? That is directly tied to MPO ability to fund roadway improvements. And that's all based on the smooth urban area that we'll go through that process probably over the next year. Also, how the state handles the local SDBG funds. Traditionally, it's been the urban clusters or those that are less than 50,000 receive the federal SDBG pots of money, and with those communities, some of them going away, will they continue to receive that? And as urban goes away, rural resides. So the funding opportunities may be actually increased for some of these areas that weren't as competitive with urban funds by using USDA grants or EDA grants. I think that's all I've got. Any questions?
I got a question, might as well ask one since it's hot in here. What constitutes separating an urbanized area from another urbanized area? Does it have to be essentially substantially vacant area of properties, or that would separate, say, Springfield from Nashville, or does Gallatin?
So does it need a new one? And I forgot to mention, Spring Hill actually is over 50,000. So they, under the old terminology, would have been an urbanized area over 50,000. Now it's just a large urban area. This is what they're coming in. There cannot be connection for those new designations, but the historic ones that are merging together, they can reside separate or can merge into one. In Tennessee, we did not have any combined, but they are growing close together. So the Murfreesboro, Nashville do touch. The Spring Hill one likely would not, and it also would not likely touch the Columbia smaller area.
Once they touch, however that's determined, they become enveloped into the larger one.
You can consolidate urban clusters or those that are under the 50,000 into a 50,000, but the combination of 50,000 and up is less likely to occur.
Okay, and that map is on the website.
That map is not
On the,
so they're supposed to release it this month.
Any other questions for Max? Okay, thanks to the staff for the report there. Moving on to the last item, other business. Is there any other business to come before this body? All right, hearing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
All right, thank y'all.
Please leave your name tag on the table, and you have to evacuate this room quickly because they've got another meeting coming in.
Evacuate because it's hot.
And this is where we'll be next month.
Y'all liking it?
I will go around and pick them up.
Good, it's,
Get all,
much
did
quieter.
you get it all, like, y'all, like, everybody had to move this time, right?
Yeah, so like, aging and disability, like, they were in Metro Center, but like a different, right next to the bank location. So they've moved to, now we're in like,